Hi everyone, Donkey Kong 64 here with a double album review. That's right, today we're talking about two records. Breather, which is a rock/alternative album, and Internet Breath, which is an emo/Nintendo core record. You can skip to this time if you want to hear just my thoughts on Internet Breath, but I highly recommend you stay around and hear my thoughts about Breather because more people need to hear it. With that being said, Breather is the debut EP from Chell And The Vetos. The project is a brisk 20 minutes and features some emotionally driven rock. I didn't know what to expect going into this blind, but I can honestly say that this project was a nice ride for the majority. The lyrics, while a bit childish, are always delivered with a lot of heart and emotion. The riffs are basic, but fit the aesthetic of the album well. And most of the tracks are solid, with I would say one exception. Camping in My Room is a quiet song with quite melancholy and symbolic lyrics. The guitar strumming fits the track's more downtrodden lyrics well, and I think overall it's an interesting, albeit a bit of a downer, opening. My favorite track is Cut Off Both My Hands, which is the second song on the album. It's probably the most re-listenable and has the most sharp lyrics out of the entire record. The rhythm of the track is exceedingly solid as well, and it's just overall a good song. Highly recommend. Another great track is Loopdeloop, which is far more robust in terms of instrumental, and it has a very catchy melody. The lyrics play with simile in a playful and interesting way, and the distorted guitar solo is something that I think is incredibly well done. Mind the Gap continues the great electric guitar riffs, although the lyrics about trains are a bit distracting to me. The song is still pretty good, the rhythm is nice, and it's overall solid in everything it tries to go for, but the lyrics are just kind of weird. And the only song I can say I don't like is the closing track, Burbank, which goes on for a bit too long, and it's just overall not as interesting to me. You can tell there was a lot of emotion behind the track, though, so I can understand if you would call it your favorite. It's not bad by any means, it's just probably the one I go back to listen to the least. Overall, while this EP is simple, its simplicity is what draws me to it. It's a charming release with a bunch of catchy melodies and colorful production. I think it needs more love because Chell And The Vetos is currently rocking at 70 monthly listeners, and I think that's a crime. If I'm giving it a number rating, this is a very solid 8 out of 10 for me. Everything it attempts to cover within its incredibly brisk runtime, it does in a way that is consistently interesting and emotionally driven. And most of the songs are just plain great. I will have a link to both the Bandcamp and the Spotify in the description. I also want to give my thoughts on Internet Breath by Hey I Love You. You look at this album cover and you don't expect to hear what you hear, but it sounds so cool and so different from everything else that's currently coming from Fifth Wave Emo. The mixing is consistently layered and interesting. The vocals, while a bit quiet in the overall production, are still incredibly crisp. Except maybe the screaming vocals on a few tracks, but, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's Fifth Wave Emo. There's going to be some screaming. I just have to get over it. My only other real complaint with this album is that there's one track that I think stands out as not being consistent in the slightest, and that is Slumped. Slumped is not like the rest of the album in the slightest. It's a lot more lo-fi, and there are no vocals whatsoever. I don't think it's bad, but I think it should have been released as a separate single, because it sort of breaks up the flow of listening when we go from one bombastic song to another bombastic song, to a quiet, low-key song, to another incredibly loud, bombastic song, you know? But everything else, from the nice guitars to the video game aesthetics, which, can I say this album does better than most projects that try to cover video games? It doesn't feel like we're shoehorning in video games to have a fun aesthetic. It seems like Internet Breath genuinely likes old things. They're nostalgic for video games, and that shows on the album with some of the samples and voice modifications, which are all done incredibly well, I must say. In summary, I don't know if this is the best record to come out of Fifth Wave Emo, because there are more that I think are more consistent and hard-hitting, but it is certainly one of the most creative. Thinking a solid 7 on this record. It's very good, and I'm glad to have gotten the very limited, first drop of the cassette. No joke, I refreshed the site and it said only 2 left, and I just happened to put it in my cart before time ran out. So I got one of the first ones. It's probably going to be worth $1 trillion someday. Or something. I don't know. I posted links to both of the albums I've discussed, so if you would like to listen to them and tell me what you think, be sure to do that in the comments section. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next review, where I say something to make somebody mad.